these 3Ds have been projected onto us as folks who menstruate. Okay. And so with these lies that you've mentioned, these lies about our bodies, these lies that lead to this shame and thinking that, our bodies are some sort of deficit and leading to the disconnection, of our bodies. What they've done is they've distracted us like, oh, I'm dirty, I'm nasty. We're only talking about, the physical pain that I'm experiencing, like you said, the curse and all the other stuff, the burden of it. So it distracts us, and we're so distracted that we don't even know it's a powerful clock built into us that all we have to do is tap into and be empowered, right?
They been cramping my style all week. Craving chocolate trees, checking pants, checking seeds, sipping herbal tea, and fight for menstrual equity. Hey, I kick cramps ass. 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 You're now tuned in to the Kick Cramps Ass Podcast with your host, Britney Walker, advocating for menstrual equity, period poverty, and womb wellness. New episodes on Menstruation Mondays.
Happy Menstruation Monday, and welcome back to the Kick Cramps Ass Podcast, the space where we treat language as a clinical weapon and biological data as your absolute currency. I am your host, Britney Walker. Now, beautiful beings, we spent the last week mapping the PMOS paradigm shift and how your oral health could have a direct connection to your menstrual symptoms. But as a professional clinical community, we know that the true health literacy cannot stop at the physical baseline. We must look at the entire biopsychosocial picture. As you know, we've been going through the biopsychosocial model all season long, where biologically, psychologically, and social impacts can have a direct impact on your health outcomes. So today, we are tackling the profound psychological and cultural systems that dictate how we inhabit our bodies. Now, our guest today is a total titan in the field of emotional wellness and human behavior, dedicated to her brilliant career to dismantling the ancestral, institutional, and relational stigmas surrounding menstruation, identity, and emotional well-being. Now, in her recent live features, Dr. Carmen spoke powerfully about what it truly means to navigate our shifting hormone fluctuations, reminding us of the radical necessity of turning within. She beautifully frames our cycles through the lens of the inner seasons, teaching us how to stop fighting our bodies and instead lean into that innate Black girl magic to rest, recharge, and create on our own terms. Now, today, we are bridging our shared psychology backgrounds to dive into the deep psychological roots of menstrual silence. We are breaking down her powerful, compassionate framework of the inner seasons to help you navigate changing energy and needs, and exploring exactly how period-positive conversations trigger intergenerational healing. Now get your notebooks, your journals, your pens, whatever you need to take notes, beautiful beings. But before we get into this amazing interview, let's ground ourselves in our I am power statement for today. Now, we like to kick off each episode with the I am power statement, with I representing inspiration, A representing affirmation, and M representing manifestation. And the I am power statement for today is, I am shedding the inherited armor of historical shame and menstrual silence. I stand completely rooted in my biological authority, commanding my inner seasons with radical compassion, psychological freedom, and absolute body sovereignty. Now, we normally like to give a quote of the day. However, today's is a more generalized statement, yet a powerful takeaway from Dr. Carmen's interview with the Brown Girl Collective's podcast, Live Well, Sister, titled Period Empowerment. And it states, menstruation is a normal, healthy part of life, yet it is often surrounded by silence and embarrassment. This stigma can have a profound impact on women's and girls' emotional well being, leading to feelings of shame, anxiety, and isolation. By breaking the silence and creating spaces for open, honest conversation, we can empower women and girls to feel confident and connected to their bodies. Now, before we bring on our amazing guests, we are going to take a sip of our good old cramp elixir and we're going to cut to our first commercial break, and we will be right back with you.
Tired of clunky remote recordings? Level up with Riverside FM Pro. Get studio quality audio and video, effortless editing with powerful AI tools, and seamless live streaming and collaboration. Become a pro of Riverside.fm and unlock the full potential of your content. Sign up today and make your voice heard. Visit the link in the description of this episode to discover more. Now, back to the show.
Welcome back from that commercial break. We hope that you guys enjoyed it. Now, let's go ahead and introduce our guest for today. Now, Dr. Carmen McNeil Clinkscales is the founder of Dr. Carmen Empowers, where she helps people build healthier relationships with themselves, with others, and with society by dismantling stigma and fostering body trust. With a PhD in psychology and more than 25 years of experience as a college professor, educator, and speaker, she facilitates workshops and delivers lectures on menstrual stigma, emotional well-being, and relationship building. Through her work, Dr. Carmen creates joyful, inclusive spaces that empower people to reconnect with their bodies, rewrite inherited narratives, and embrace the wisdom of their inner seasons. She believes that when one person heals their relationship with themselves, that healing can ripple across families, communities, and generations. Please welcome Dr. Carmen to the show. Greetings, Dr. Carmen.
Greetings. Thank you so much. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. It is such a pleasure to have you on the Kick Cramps Ass Podcast today. And let's go ahead and get started and let the people know all of this amazing education and knowledge that they can take home with them today and even save for future reference or share with somebody they feel like can resonate.
Absolutely.
All righty. Now, Dr. Carmen, with over 25 years of studying human behavior, you look deeply at the psychological roots of menstrual stigma. From a cognitive and behavioral perspective, how does growing up in a culture of menstrual silence fundamentally alter a person's identity, self-esteem, and body trust early on?
Yes. Thank you for this question, Brittany. As you've alluded to in the intro, the stigma lies in the silence. The secrecy is what tends to perpetuate the stigma, right? So it's important that we have these conversations. So thank you so much for this platform. And, in terms of your question about, from a cognitive and behavioral perspective, how does growing up in this culture of menstrual silence, impact, a person's identity or self-esteem early on? It has a huge impact early on. I did about 3 years ago a sabbatical, particularly on this, called Dismantling Menstrual Stigma as an Act of Social Justice. And there were several parts to that sabbatical. But one of the things that I did was I interviewed people from a variety of backgrounds, ages, sexual orientations, gender. So there were men, women, folks in their 70s, folks in their 20s, just the gamut of different backgrounds. And for both people who menstruate and people who did not, so we're talking about males and females, there was lots of discomfort around, discussing the topic. There was fear around discussing the topic. There was anxiety around discussing the topic. There was shame. And I'm talking both for males as well. And so that showed me that this doesn't just impact the people who menstruate, right? This can potentially impact everyone. So in terms of self-esteem, I am very, very clear that this is also a gender issue as well. And for a long time, women have been seen as the less than, right? There's something wrong with their bodies. They're weaker. They're this. They're that. And so this is just another layer of, frankly, denigrating women. And so growing up in that type of culture can have a huge detrimental impact on self-esteem, on our self-worth, on our self-advocacy, and definitely disconnecting ourselves from our bodies. So we have that lack of body trust uh, early on. And I know we're going to get into the juiciness of all of that, but this has a huge detrimental impact. So that's one of the things that I really, really want to emphasize.
Absolutely. And thank you so much for expressing that and going into more detail because we've talked about stigma, we've talked about gender, how men perceive things, how culturally things are perceived, especially unfortunately in the Black culture. It's like, girl, it's the curse. You're going to have to just go through it. If it's 7 or 10 days, whoop de doo, you better get some medicine and keep it moving because we're strong Black women and we're just supposed to keep going. And it's like, no, no, and no.
Yeah, I mean, there are just so many mistruths and lies about our bodies where we think that the normal is abnormal and the abnormal is normal. And so having these types of experiences in terms of how we talk about the menstrual cycle, like how it's couched, there were times when women's bodies were revered, were seen for the wisdom that they offer. And then when we started getting into bringing in more science-based approaches, the respect around women's bodies began to diminish. And that's where we see a lot of these mistruths coming in, these lies coming in around the worth of women's bodies. It's powerful, sis.
Yes, super powerful. And thank you for being an advocate for it. Now, we often talk about the psychological toll of medical gaslighting on this platform. In your work, how have you seen inherited body shame impact an individual's willingness to practice clinical self advocacy and seek support when they are experiencing severe metabolic or hormonal disruptions?
Yeah, so for those folks who are new to this beautiful platform, medical gaslighting involves the experience of like having a healthcare professional to dismiss or minimize or invalidate your concerns, your symptoms or concerns. And so this can really lead patients to doubt their own physical experiences, their own, mental health experiences, and it can stem from bias on behalf of the medical provider. It can stem from time constraints, trying to rush and get through patients or just, a lack of understanding. And so, unfortunately, medical gaslighting is experienced by lots of Black women. And that's just the reality. So, in terms of some of the impacts of this medical gaslighting, we can feel like what we're experiencing is beyond our control. One of the components of psychological hardiness is having an internal locus of control versus an external locus of control. For folks who have an external locus of control, they tend to feel like they are powerless, that they are victims of their circumstances. And when we're experiencing this medical gaslighting, we can shift from having an internal locus of control to external. Oh, there's nothing that I can do about this, right? So it's very disempowering. It can lead to hopelessness. It can lead to anxiety. It can lead to being very passive in terms of caring for ourselves. And this empowerment, it really erodes our self-worth. It can even lead to learned helplessness, where we stop trying. We learn to stop trying even when solutions are available. So when you're in this type of mindset, this disempowered mindset, you're not going to engage in the type of clinical self-advocacy that is required to take full ownership, of our bodies and of our experiences. So when I mention clinical self-advocacy, we're talking about the process of actively participating in your own medical care, right? So it involves communicating to your healthcare provider your healthcare goals. What are your goals? What do you want? It
Right.
includes asking clarifying questions, right, about the treatment plans or the medication that's prescribed. It includes preparing for appointments, writing down your symptoms, being prepared before you even go and have that appointment with your doctor. Like I said, asking the clarifying questions, engaging in clinical self advocacy also includes summarizing what the doctors have said. We call it the teach back method. So summarize what the doctor has said to you in your own words so that you both are clear that you understand. This clinical advocacy could include bringing a person to support you to your doctor's appointments. Bring a sister friend, bring a parent, bring a cousin, whoever that person is.
Right.
And it also includes getting second opinions. And
Yes.
so when we talk about the toll of medical gaslighting, this is huge because it is going to impact negative or can potentially impact how we advocate for ourselves, taking ownership of our health and who we are, and even seeking support. So it's huge.
Absolutely. One thing I like to tell my clients is if you have time to dead scroll on social media, you have time to educate yourself. And
Yes.
then going to your doctor's offices, being prepared for that and knowing your body, what you're actually experiencing, and knowing more about your potential diagnosis so you don't feel unprepared or like it's too much information coming at you. You can prepare to not feel overwhelmed and be able to combat if there is actual medical gaslighting going on during that appointment.
And the other thing to add to that is some doctors are not used to their patients asking questions.
Yes.
They're not used to that. And so, in terms of that clinical self advocacy, we want to go into that appointment potentially being prepared, like not having a chip on your shoulder because you want to be relaxed as much as you can, but prepared for some pushback, right, from that medical professional who is not used to being asked questions. I have had this experience with different health challenges in my life, and so I am very, very clear that the medical professional is there to serve me. And
Yes.
so I get to ask questions. I get to ask the doctor to tell me what this term is. If they've used a medical term that I don't understand, I get to ask, can you share that with me in a different way? Can you explain that in a different way? And so I am not rocked, or I am not, I don't lose focus if the medical professional takes offense to me asking questions. Remain focused on what my goal is and that they are there to be of service to me. And so if this is a new approach for some of your audience members, if this is a new way of going about it, you want to just be prepared for that and stay focused on your goals. Have your notes on your phone or your tablet or, on a piece of paper, and stay focused on your goals so that you are
Yes.
not swayed if you are interacting with a medical professional who is not used to being asked questions.
Yes, absolutely. Don't be intimidated. Know your power because you are paying for it. You're paying for a service. Absolutely. Absolutely. Such a handful of information, guys. Valuable information at that. So we're going to take a moment and let all of that sink in. We're going to cut to our next commercial break and we will be right back with you.
Periods got you down? Kick cramps to the curb with Pilates for periods. Our online program combines targeted Pilates, soothing yoga, calming meditation, and breathwork to help you manage your menstrual cycle naturally. Feel stronger, calmer, and more in control. Reclaim your comfort. Visit Pilates for Periods YouTube page linked in the description of this episode and start your journey to a more manageable cycle today. Now, back to the show.
Welcome back from that commercial break, everybody. We hope that you enjoyed it. So, you have beautifully highlighted how negative cultural messages about menstruation are deeply tied to broader patterns of gender bias. How do these societal biases map onto the way we view workplace and school productivity, forcing people to try to fit in an infraradian rhythm into a rigid linear clock?
So, at least in most of the United States or lots of the United States, I'm going to go out on a limb and say we are in a society of what some have called a hurry sickness or a hurried
Yeah.
sickness, where everything is go, 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 right? Everything is quick, move, get there, boom, boom, boom. We perceive that we need to be in a rush all the time in terms of this productivity. We feel like we have to multitask in order, to get things done. When most people are really not effective multitaskers, we can experience weight rage when, you have to be in a line and you upset about that, or the computer isn't working as fast as you want it to. So,
Right.
this weight rage and this physical tension, chronic physical tension related to this culture of hurried sick go, 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 never rest. And so I'm going to say that that is not beneficial for most people's well being, if not all people's well being. And so when we talk about workplace and school productivity, it's very, and even like sport productivity, if you're into
Right.
sports or whatever
Right.
your thing is, if it's, even if it's just, a hobby, or you sell products, or, whatever that is, you play an instrument, there's just a lot of pressure to continue to produce and produce quickly. And so that is not generally beneficial for our emotional health, for our psychological health, our physical health, our spiritual health. None of the components of wellness does that tend to be useful
Yes.
for. And it's so beautiful that in terms of our inner seasons, which I know that we're going to get to, but the menstrual cycle that many of us can take advantage of, it's really a guide for self care. It tells
Right.
us, when we pay attention to it, how to take care of ourselves, when to slow down, when to to be active and more productive, when to be reflective, when to go inward. The plan is built in for us. And so when we learn that plan, when we learn that cycle, when we learn that internal system of self care, then it's very important that we teach others, especially in this culture of hurried sickness and go, go, go. No, hurried sickness is not beneficial for my self care. So this is when I'm going to be available. This is when I'll be able to get that done. And so it can work, but it takes a certain level of awareness, understanding that we have clocks built into us that teach us how to take care of ourselves, and then verbalizing that to other people to increase their awareness and start to think about, this hurried sickness and how it's not beneficial for anybody.
Right, right. I actually did an episode with a creative entrepreneur consulting agency in June, and we were talking about the hustle and bustle. We have this mindset that it's in America that it's hustle, hustle, hustle. I can sleep when I'm 40, 50, 60, and it's like, no, 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 no. Because by the time you get there, you're going to have all these diagnoses. So,
Right. You're
yeah,
going to be
so no, yeah, you're gonna be burnt out. It's like, no, you can't do that. So I absolutely love that you said that. And then, like you said, people being aware. I think awareness is something that we talk about all the time. Just being aware, just paying attention to what's in front of you and what your body is telling you. Because typically, if your body's having a reaction that you don't want, it's either you put too much or too little of something in it. And it's telling you, like, hey, we need to get some things going so we can regulate here. And I feel like people don't pay attention to that. They just assume like, well, I'm supposed to be in pain, or eventually I am going to get sick one day, or this is supposed to happen. Everybody in America is sick. And it's like, yeah, go to a different country. And that's not the case. It's not the case.
Right. Yeah,
So,
exactly. And again, it's that mindset of
yeah,
accepting that this hurried sickness is the norm, and it's not. It's like the facade. And so
yeah,
those of us who are aware, I feel like it's our job to plant seeds of awareness. And it could just be in terms of, creating healthy boundaries for ourselves. I'm not going to be available on the day that you're requesting, but I can be available on this day. And even that is just planting a seed of awareness. Or if you're seeing someone, you have a loved one who you see it taking a toll, trying to keep up with this hurried sickness, it can be asking them like, I wonder if it seems like this might be a good time for you to rest. Like just that is planting a seed. We don't have to take it all on, but just plant those seeds with our loved ones, and then we water them, and
Exactly.
nourish those seeds,
Exactly.
while doing the same thing for ourselves.
Exactly. I am a firm believer. I have no problems with setting boundaries with people, places, things, situations. If it's messing with my peace, if it's affecting my health mentally, emotionally, spiritually, physically, or financially, no mail.
Right.
Boundaries.
Right.
Boundaries. I don't care who you are. All right. When we look at the psychological mechanics of body shame, it is often causes people to feel disconnected from their own biology. What are the first psychological steps to unlearning these inherited lies so people can reclaim their biological authority and view their cycle as a vital sign rather than a design flaw?
Yeah. So this is sort of a roundabout way of answering your question, but my son used to study martial arts.
Hmm.
And in some general self defense training, there are what some of them call like these 3 Ds of self defense. And that is to distract,
Hmm.
to disorient, and to disable in that order.
Right.
And the strategy aims to interrupt, an attacker's focus, to diminish their coordination so that they're confused or that they're in pain, so that they're
Hmm.
physically weakened. Now, the reason that I bring that up is because these 3 Ds have been projected onto us as folks who menstruate. Okay. And so with these lies that you've mentioned, these lies about our bodies, these lies that lead to this shame and thinking that, our bodies are some sort of deficit and leading to the disconnection, of our bodies. What they've done is they've distracted us like, oh, I'm dirty, I'm nasty. Oh, we're only talking about the physical pain that I'm experiencing, like you said, the curse and all the other stuff, the burden of it. So it distracts us. And we're so distracted that we don't even know it's a powerful clock built into us that all we have to do is tap into and be empowered. Right. So we are distracted and then we're disoriented. Oh, let me focus on purchasing period care products that have sense in them. No, sis, that's not helpful for your body. No, no, we need to gain our focus. And then, so we're distracted, we're disoriented, and then we become disabled. Disabled in this sense, meaning disempowered, right? Feeling
Yeah.
diminished, like we were talking about earlier with the clinical self-advocacy, engaging or learning that I can do nothing about it. That's disabling. Sis, that is what has happened to us. So many, not all, but many folks who menstruate are distracted, they're disoriented, and they are disabled, right?
Yes.
In terms of taking care of themselves. So I think one of the first steps in terms of your question was, one of the first psychological steps to unlearning these is, of course, being on a platform just like this, becoming educated. Because when we grow up in this type of society, we don't know that there's a different way. We haven't learned that there's a different way. So we think the
Yeah.
negativity is the norm, right?
Exactly.
And it's sort of like the Matrix. You want to take the blue pill or the red pill? You want to really know what's going on, or do you want to stay with, with this mask, with the shadow, with the
Right.
falsehoods?
Yeah. In your little bubble.
Right, right, exactly. So educating yourself, being open to the idea that there's a different way of experiencing the menstrual cycle. I've talked to lots of folks who menstruate, and some of them have unfortunately internalized so much of the negativity that they don't want to talk about it, that they're disgusted, talking about it, which just is so sad. It just so saddens me because that's evidence of the disabling, right? It's
Exactly.
evidence that you are distracted and disoriented and don't know the truth. So, educating yourself, being open to the idea that there is a different way of experiencing this. When I interviewed folks for the sabbatical that I mentioned, I wove into the interview this concept of menstrual joy. Menstrual joy. For some people, that's an oxymoron. Like they don't go
Right.
together. And so they were like, what? Like, no way. I don't experience no way, no how, no kind of menstrual joy. The only joy that I experience is because I'm happy that I'm not pregnant. That's it.
Right.
And so I try to encourage folks to be open to the possibility that there is a different way of experiencing this. There is a way of experiencing this where you feel empowered, where you do feel in control, where you can set healthy boundaries. Because, we're both in psychology. And so mental health, we are aware of that. And particularly for women, Black women as well, one of the underlying roots of some of our mental challenges is not being able to set healthy boundaries. And so, yes. And so this is so important, understanding that you don't have to be distracted, disoriented, and disabled in terms of embracing this menstrual cycle. And so when we do that, we can peel off or begin to peel off those layers of shame, right? And we become reconnected with our bodies, right? Because part of this question was, people are feeling disconnected from their bodies, and that's what the distraction does.
Right.
And when we reconnect to our bodies, boom, that's when we are really standing into our power or resting into our power, right? Communicating our boundaries into our power. So I would say that those are some of the first steps of really, really stepping into this in a way that says, this is a powerful tool.
Yes. I love that you use martial arts as the metaphor, the analogy, whatever you want to say, because I grew up in a household with my dad, black belt in martial arts, so I get it.
Okay.
As soon as you said it, I'm like, that is like chef's kiss. And then the other thing that resonated with me that you mentioned about how disconnected we are from our bodies. Sometimes you don't realize, like, sis, you might have PCOS, so you're not supposed to be drinking alcohol. You can't go out with your homegirls every weekend or brunch. And if they make you feel bad about it, knowing that you have that, then maybe that's not your homegirls. Or you, like you said, you're being the strong Black woman and you're just taking on so much and you're people pleasing everybody, your spouse, your kids, your job, family, neighbors, whoever. Everybody's pulling you in all these different directions and you don't know how to say no and don't realize that stress is affecting your cycle. Or even you mentioned about not having joy around your cycle. Until I shifted my mindset on, oh, I have these 10-day cycles and it's so horrible and I have dysmenorrhea and I have menorrhagia. But once I reversed everything and once I got rid of everything, I'm like, you have to change your mindset. But then you still have the pushback on, well, you're a nutrition. Well, I'm a retired chef before I became a nutrition. They're like, well, you were formerly a chef and you're a nutritionist, so it's different for you. And I'm like, no, because before I became a nutritionist, I was 100 pounds overweight and had 10 diagnoses. Now I've lost all that weight, made a whole bunch of lifestyle changes, and I have no diagnosis. So again, once you know better, you do better. But if you have that influence around you that, like you said, culturally, all your friends are complaining about the cycle, they don't see any joy in it. It's like tap into our culture, because if you tap into our culture, especially African culture, your cycle is sacred. That's
Yeah.
divinity. It's so divine, and you don't realize how powerful you are in the midst of those 5 days of being on menstruation, or just learning how, like, we're going to get into seasons in a second, and learning how to use your different inner seasons to be able to proactively manage your cycle. But people, like you said, they're so distracted about social media, trying to be, YOLO. They feel like they're going to miss out, or FOMO, like everybody's doing this without me. And you're just so focused about all the things that at the end of the day, when your cycle comes, everybody's not there holding your hand, doing everything. You're the one who's going to have to ultimately, I don't want to say suffer, but you're saying, oh, it's such agony and it's such pain, but it's like you're suffering because you're repeating the same cycle month in and month out and not doing anything differently. So when are you going to wake up and become aware of your surrounding, your lifestyle, what you eat, what you put in your body, medication, household products, toiletries, stress, movement, all of those things contribute to what's going to happen with your cycle each month.
Right. Exactly. Exactly. Yes. Thank you so much for sharing all of that.
Absolutely. I just had to add some little tidbits onto your
I
amazing
love it. And the
delivery.
piece about when you mentioned about that, might not be able to go out with the girls to brunch and all that kind of stuff. You can go, but just share with them why you're not drinking, right? Share with them beforehand, before you go. Have
Yes.
some idea of what you're going to eat, because what you eat obviously impacts your cycle as well.
Right.
Have some idea, maybe look at the brunch menu in advance and be selective,
Yes.
about what it is that you're going to eat. And, it's going to be new for you. It's going to be new for your girlfriends, your sister friends. And so you might have to repeat it
Right.
a couple times. A lot of times we need to hear things 3 times before it sinks in.
Yes.
And then if they still trying to encourage you to drink and all that kind of stuff, then you know that that's probably not your people. That's not going to be the people that's fully support you. Because if they love you, they're going to be
Absolutely.
like, okay, my sis told me she's not drinking because she's experiencing this and it's better for her body. So let me let her alone and offer her just the orange juice instead of the
Right.
libation that goes with it.
Right.
So yes, there
Yeah.
are
Not
ways that
succumbing.
we can. What's that?
Yes, exactly. And not succumbing to the peer pressure and just tapping into your discipline, tapping into the bigger picture of 30 days from now, 2 weeks from now, whenever your cycle's coming, what I'm doing now is going to have a direct effect on that. So I can care less of what any of you were talking about right now. You can't make me feel bad about being myself. You can't make me do that. So I think also menstruators learning how to tap into that form of power too, of understanding who you are as an individual and not allowing people to get under your skin and make you feel less than because you're not doing what they want you to do.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah, absolutely. And in taking care of yourself, you are planting seeds with other people as well. They're
Yes.
going to start to think like, oh, I didn't even know that, maybe I should pay attention to what I'm consuming. And maybe has an impact on how I experience the menstrual cycle. It plants seeds, which is important as well.
Absolutely, absolutely. And not just with your homegirls, but I always talk about intimacy too,
Yeah.
romantic partners and everything. If you want to live your whole best life and your whole, what the youngins say, I'm acting like I'm not a youngin, but the youngins say what hot girl summer and all that stuff. Like if that's what you want to do, cool, but be mindful. All them different energies coming in and out your body and you don't know what that
Baby.
doing, honey, that is all in your womb, is all getting stuck. And if you don't know, allowing it inside of your body, that has a direct effect on your cycle too. And people don't believe that, but it is so true. That cute
Yeah.
face, it don't mean nothing. It don't mean
Yes.
nothing. What that energy bringing,
Yes.
what that
Well,
hygiene bringing.
yes. Yes. I am in complete agreement with what you just said. You need to be mindful and selective about whose energy we're allowing inside of us.
Yes,
And it's allow, right?
yes,
Whose energy are we allowing, And I have heard, I have not participated in myself, but I've heard that there are some practices that you can do to rid your body of those energies that you may not want, them to remain in your bodies and do that, but be selective first if you can.
exactly. Exactly. Now let's shift gears to the inner seasons. I love your compassionate framework of the inner seasons: winter, spring, summer, and fall. We've been highlighting that a lot during the podcast this season and a lot during our content. We've talked about it briefly over the 3 years that we've been open, but more so this year because people don't realize that we have that sort of calendar and their body changes when the seasons change and how you can combat that. So, to track changing energy and needs, people can tap into their inner seasons. Can you walk us through how utilizing this psychological model helps individuals map their emotional landscape, particularly for someone navigating a polyendocrine condition like PMOS, where mood and metabolism are so closely linked?
Yes, absolutely. So, first, I just want to acknowledge that most people are not aware that there are 4 phases in the menstrual cycle. When we use the word or the phrase or the term menstrual cycle, really we're talking about one part of the cycle, which is the bleeding part of the cycle. When we say experiencing our menstrual cycle. So, people think they're either on their period or they're not, and that the cycle has two phases. I'm either on it or I'm not.
Right.
Not really realizing that their juice, their power that we were talking about before comes to understanding all four phases of the cycle. And so I like to use the weather seasons, because we all understand the seasons of, spring, summer, winter, fall. We understand that. We understand that throughout the year, we're going to rotate, through these various seasons. We understand what tends to happen, in terms of the weather during the seasons. So I find it's a nice way to connect to the menstrual cycle so that people actually begin to understand it. It makes it a little more tangible. So when I explain the inner seasons, I start with winter. And winter, we know what it's like in winter. It's cold in winter. We putting on more layers in winter. The nights are longer.
Yes.
The days are shorter. We might want or crave like more like warm broths and liquids and,
Right.
teas or what have you, perhaps some of your elixirs. We might want to curl up on the couch and just put our feet up in winter. So we understand winter. Well, in terms of the menstrual cycle, winter is the actual menstruation phase, meaning when you're actually bleeding, when you're actually on your period. And so during that particular phase of the cycle, for a lot of people, they experience drops in magnesium. And so that's why we say that some people crave chocolate, because chocolate is a wonderful source of magnesium. Not the only source. Please be careful with how you're getting in your magnesium. But so winter is sort of that time where we can, if we're using the menstrual cycle as a guide to self-care, which it is, winter is a time to go inward and to reflect. So this may be a time where you might be journaling more. Maybe you're spending more time in stillness and rest. I'm blanking on the sister's name, but she has a campaign of rest as resistance.
Mhm.
So you're understanding that to take care of yourself, rest is important. And I'm going through these seasons using sort of a general example. Of course, everyone's seasons and how it looks is going to be different for them, which is why tracking is really, really important. And I know you talk about tracking,
Yes.
but tracking things like your energy levels, tracking things like what you're consuming, your food, your drink, tracking things like what you're consuming in terms of social media, tracking things like what you're consuming in terms of who's around you, like who you're sharing your
Yes.
energy with, all of that, tracking things like your bowel movements, right? All of that
Right.
is important in terms of tracking. So this is just a general example. Okay, so that is winter. We tend to go inward. It's a time, or it can be if we use it appropriately, a time for reflection, a time for stillness, a time for just listening to music, for, maybe more meditation than you do in other phases of the cycle. So that's what winter is. And then so after winter, we know what comes after winter in terms of seasons of the weather, spring, right? And so spring is a time of new beginnings, right? We tend to start blooming, in spring. The flowers are starting to come up and, new seasons of growth. And so when we're in our spring, this is a time where we might be, a little more engaging with folks. We're getting out there, a little
Right.
bit more. Spring is also the time to plan your spring in terms of your inner seasons is the time to plan, jot down, brainstorm what you want to do in terms of your goals, in terms of your goals for that month, in terms of things that you want to get done, tasks for that month. Spring is a time to plan that, to jot that stuff down. If you have any kind of task planner, that's journal, whatever it is, that's the time to write down those things that you would like to get done. The planning for that. What phone calls do I need to make? What follow-ups do I need to do? Spring is really the time to plan that, right? In terms of our menstrual cycle. And then after spring is summer. Summer is crack-a-lack and the days are long, high productivity. Okay, high productivity in summer. Now, this is part of ovulation when we're talking about the menstrual cycle, right? This is the time where if you want to get pregnant, this is when you would need to increase your sex so that the egg can be fertilized, during ovulation. But I really want to encourage people to think broader around creation in terms of the summer, because this is not just about having babies, right? This is like creating new ideas, creating new business plans,
Yes.
business
Yep.
ideas, creating new ways of being, right? Maybe you have space to create, new relationships with folks who are going to support you. So this is broader than just having children. This is like, birthing new ideas and, moving forward. Well, so the things that you planned in spring, you're going to activate those things and implement them in summer. Summer is high productivity. And then we get into fall. Okay. And then we get into fall. And so in fall, this is the time that is off of the cycle that's often associated with PMS, premenstrual syndrome. Right? Well, I like to reframe lots of things, but I like to reframe PMS to premenstrual self-care. So fall is the time where we talked before about, overall that women are seen as less than and there's problems with their bodies because they bleed and women are not valued as much as men. Or in fall, this is when we just had enough. Can we cuss on here? I better not. This is when we
Okay.
just have had enough of that stuff.
Yeah.
Okay? We're
Right.
not taking it no more. Okay? And we can no longer hold our tongue. And this is where people may tend to feel more feisty during this fall phase, this so-called PMS phase. You're like, I have had it. Your temper tends to be a little shortened, like I'm not dealing with it no more. Okay. But fall, and all those things can be true, but fall is the time to purge
Yes.
toxic people, places, and things. So fall is a time to declutter your physical space. Fall is a time to declutter toxic people. Fall is a time to declutter toxic foods, from out your life if you can completely. Like fall is the time to purge stuff that's not working for you because you're preparing for winter, which is coming next, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, fall is the time to begin to purge. And when you think about fall in terms of the seasons, fall is the time of like harvesting your fruits and your vegetables and all that kind of stuff. So in terms of the menstrual cycle, we can harvest the good. So we can look back over the prior couple phases in the cycle and acknowledge ourselves for the good. What was great about summer? What were you able to accomplish? What was great about the prior spring? Maybe you did some beautiful planning. What was great about the prior winter? Maybe you engaged in lots of meditation and had some new realizations. So fall is the time to purge and also acknowledge the good, like what's been great that has happened over the prior 20 days, 19 days, depending on, every one cycle, right? Fall is the time to do that. So Queen Britney, I just want, if we can all just imagine that if even half of the people who menstruate embodied this inner season, because on average, this is happening every 28 days, right? Everyone's different, but on average, this process, this guide for self-care that I just described is happening every month. So every month you engage in a time of self-reflection. That's winter. Every month you engage in a time of planning what you're going to do for the next phase. Every month you implement what you planned in the prior phase. Every month you have a time where you declutter toxic people, places, and things, where you acknowledge your accomplishments, big and small, and you get ready to go back into winter. Sis, this is powerful.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Such a handful of information, guys. I hope you all took some notes wherever you are in the world. We hope that you did. So we're going to cut to our final commercial break and we will be right back with you.
Fly. Do you want
Back to the show.
Now, gratitude to all of you for tuning in today. We want you to stay deeply mindful, protect your internal peace, and keep moving. We manifest a positive, productive, and peaceful day ahead, week ahead, and menstrual journey ahead. And we will be speaking to you during our next episode on our next Menstruation Monday. Peace.